Who are some of Jamey's guys this year? Some guys that he drafts a lot. Well, he's probably drafting right now. We'll find out on Fantasy Football Today Express. Yes, Jamey drafts a lot, so we find out. I like Kyler Murray. I know he's one of your guys, right? He's definitely one of your guys.
Kyler Murray is definitely one of my guys. Very excited about the upside that he brings. Should get back to being one of the better running quarterbacks. And with the addition of Marvin Harrison Jr., excited to see what he's as a passer as well. Remember, the first 2 years of his career, he was an amazing fantasy quarterback. He's had a lot of good moments since then, but we forget how good he can be, I think, because of the ACL tear and what he looked like last year. So I was encouraged when he came back last season and still ran for about 30 yards per game. I think he's going to be better than that, or at least be more consistent doing that. Just really excited to see what he can do, and the value is unbelievable. You can get him as almost QB 9 or 10. For me, he's QB 6, so he is probably my most rostered quarterback, and I will continue to draft him very much.
And is he the captain of your team, of your players you draft a lot team?
Probably. It's either him, maybe Chris Godwin. I draft a lot of him. I draft a lot of T. Higgins. Very surprised by how much I have Higgins on my team. Trying to think who would be the captain. Kincaid could be the captain. Rico Dowdle might be the captain. But let's go with Kyler. Quarterbacks are usually the captains.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, Kyler Murray. All right, so you talked about Rico Dowdle. Is that a recent thing for you, taking a lot of Rico Dowdle?
No, it's been a pretty constant thing. I think him and Chase Brown, Brown's getting a little bit too expensive. But those guys were going in a similar range. Dowdle probably still a little bit later than him. But in any event, Dowdle is somebody that I think is just worth taking a shot on. If he ends up hitting as the starting running back and the best running back for the Cowboys, doesn't have to be the starter, but the best running back for the Cowboys, then you have a pretty good value there, for somebody who's still going after pick 100 overall. So easy to look at him and say, take a shot. And, you're in most cases, at least for me, at worst, running back 4, so easy guy to put on your roster.
Overall, running back 4.
Overall, yes.
Yeah. So that's Rico Dowdle. You mentioned Chase Brown. Do you draft Zach Moss ever?
I definitely do. And it's funny, I have about 40 minutes to lock in keepers for one of my keeper leagues. We keep 4 players, and Moss was somebody I picked up off waivers last year, had on my team the entire time. And so based on how we do our keeper rules, he'll be one of my keepers. So I'm going to have some Zach Moss shares, and we'll continue to. Look, we don't know how this is going to work out. We really don't know how it's all going to unfold. And there's some fantasy conspiracy theorists that think that if the Broncos cut Samaje Perine, he goes right back to Cincinnati, which would be awful for both Chase Brown and Zach Moss. But in any event, in the current structure of what their backfield looks like, it could be Moss. He could be the guy. Wouldn't be surprising, but I just think Chase Brown brings more upside, more explosiveness, knows the system, gotten rave reviews. We just need to see it on the field happen, and hopefully that's the case.
Who's another one of your guys, your dudes?
I mentioned Chris Godwin, easy guy to target based on his ADP. You can get him as, like right around wide receiver 30, if not later. And last year was awful for him. The year before that was the ACL tear, so we're waiting for him to get back to form. I don't know if that's ever going to happen. Certainly not going to be the Jameis Winston, Tom Brady, Chris Godwin. I just don't think that's realistic to expect. But going back to the slot should help him, get back to being a much more consistent contributor. And we saw at the end of last season, there's 2 things about him from last season that stand out to me. One, the last 5 games when the complaints started to happen, out-targeted Mike Evans over that 5-game stretch. It wasn't much, but still more targets, which was something to, raise the antenna. And then the one game where Mike Evans got hurt, I think it was like week 3 or 4, Chris Godwin was an absolute stud last year. And so there's that potential as well, that if something were to happen to Mike Evans, then Chris Godwin easily becomes the go-to guy.
Yeah, and he also said that he's still, it was either him or Todd Bowles saying that it took like a long time, well over a year before he felt healthy coming off the torn ACL. So I think we're going to get 100% healthy Chris Godwin this year being used the right way. We're going to take a break on Fantasy Football Today Express to talk about Dalton Kincaid and some more players that Jamey drafts a lot after this. Okay, Dalton Kincaid, do you think he's your most rostered tight end?
He is right now. I have a lot of Jake Ferguson. I have, I'm not running. I shouldn't have running. I'm starting to see a few more teams where I'm getting Trey McBride and Mark Andrews. Have my guillotine draft start this week and took McBride because I wanted to get a solidified potential star at that position. But Kincaid just falls into such a great spot. He's round 5, in some cases round 6 pick, and I think could be in the conversation to be tight end 1. And so that's hard to pass up. Look, we haven't seen much in the preseason. That's going to make some people nervous. But we haven't seen much of Josh Allen in the preseason either. So I don't know why people should be panicked. But when you start to look at it, and we know, Adam, that middle group of tight end rankings, so I think for the most part, but you should put Kincaid in this group. But I think for the most part, just because he hasn't done anything yet, it's Kincaid, it's Kittle, it's Pitts, and it's Ingram. And it's not really fair, I think, to say what I'm about to say about Kittle and Ingram, because they've done a lot. Kittle certainly more so than Ingram, but there's uncertainty. There's uncertainty with those guys. Kittle's point per game has dropped 5 years in a row. Ingram, big spike last year, but how much of that was Christian Kirk? Pitts, we're waiting to see. Kincaid, we're waiting to see. So there's a little bit of different conversations about all these guys. But for me, Kincaid stands above that group because he could be number one on this team in targets. And that wouldn't be surprising if he leads the Bills in that category.
I think the issue I have with Kincaid is that it seems like based on average draft position, he is actually closer to the Trey McBride, Mark Andrews group than the Kittle, the Pittle group. And I do think he should be more like closer to round 6 with the Pittles than closer to round 4 with the McAndrews group.
So you don't see the upside of Kincaid being tight end 1? Which is fair.
I don't think so. No, I don't think he has as much upside as the top 4 guys.
I don't disagree with that, but I also see the path.
I think he's solidly in the middle of the first group of 4 and then that group of 3. Clearly tight end 5. Question is, because sometimes he goes ahead of of McBride or Andrews, which I think is weird.
I will say it's fascinating to see where he goes in best ball, because when you take Allen, you want to take Kincaid right away.
That's a good point. Yeah. Okay. And then did we talk about Malik Neighbors?
No.
Is he one of your guys now?
Yes. I took Malik Neighbors with my 10-year-old in our father-son draft.
Nice.
I have taken a lot of Malik Neighbors over the last several weeks. I'm excited. Look, I think you see the potential. You see how awful Daniel Jones can be. You saw how awful Daniel Jones can be in the preseason game against the Falcons, and yet still you saw how awesome Malik Neighbors can be. So the biggest thing that should scare you about Malik Neighbors is the touchdowns, because who knows how many the Giants will score? Who knows how many Daniel Jones will throw? And right now, if you were kind of, and you shouldn't be doing this, but if you're kind of hoping maybe Drew Lock could be something different for Malik Neighbors, or maybe Tommy DeVito, then it's not going to be pretty across the board. But he can still survive in this environment enough to be a top 20 wide receiver. And so I wouldn't overvalue him more than that. Like, I think people putting him in the top 12, taking him around 2, that's a little bit too soon. For me, he's a back end around 3 at the earliest. And I know I'm aggressive in how I have him ranked, but I'm still, again, looking for the upside in most players, and he has as much as anybody. So that's why I will take him in that range. But you get him in round 4, much better. You get him round 5, it's just easy.
All right. That is Jamey Eisenberg. I'm Adam Azer. This is Fantasy Football Today Express, and we will talk to you tomorrow.